morning, St. Mark's. My name is Chris. I want to welcome you into worship this morning. Let's stand. If you're able, whether you're watching on the stream, whether you're here in the house, we're so glad that you've joined us for worship this morning. We're going to worship God. Let's open our worship this morning in prayer. God, we thank you for who you are. You're a God that we can worship. And we just ask that this morning that you would make our worship just about you. It's only about you, God. That we would worship honestly for you and you only. We pray all this in the name of your Son. Amen. Let's go. This one's a little new. I'm going to help teach it. We sing Yahweh. Here we go. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Holy is your name. I don't want to take it. I don't want to take it in vain. Sing Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Holy is your name. Holy is your name. I don't want to take it in vain. We sing Yahweh. Do it again. Yahweh, Yahweh. Holy is your name. Holy is your name. I don't want to take it in vain. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Holy is your name. I don't want to take it in vain. There will be no other God before you. Yeah. There will be no other God before you. There is no one. Oh, there is no one above you. No one beside you. Nobody like you. There will be no other God before you. It's your part right here. No one, no one, no one. Remember that part. Yeah. No one, no one. Ba, 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 ba. Sing Yahweh again. Yahweh. Oh, Yahweh. Holy is your name. I don't want to take it in vain. Sing Yahweh. 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 Holy is your name. I don't want to take it in vain. There will be no other God before you. No, there won't. There will be no other God before you. There is no one. There is no one above you. No one beside you. Nobody like you. There will be no other God before you. Right here. No one, no one, no one. No one, no one, no one, no one. Here we go. You're gonna sing your part after me. Who else can lead us to freedom? No one, no one, no one. Who else can heal all our sins and diseases? No one, no one, no one. Who else can walk on the water? No one, no one, no one. And who else can answer by fire? No one, no one. And who else can bring down the tallest of giants? No one, no one. And who else can silence the roar of the lion? No one, no one. And who else is worthy of free? No one, no one. I said, who else is worthy of worship? going to jump now over into Romans. And we'll sing these words essentially right off the page from Romans 8. Let him turn it in your favor. Watch him work it for your good. He's not done with what he started. He's not done until it's good. Let him turn it in your favor. Watch him work it for your good. He's not done with what he started. He's not done until it's good. Hello peace, hello joy. Hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. Hello peace, hello joy, hello love. Hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. And if you're ready for a breakthrough, just open up and just receive. 'Cause what he's pouring out is nothing, nothing you've ever seen. You've ever seen. Yeah. Hello peace, hello joy, hello love, hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. Hello peace, hello joy, hello love, hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. We know that one of the promises of God is the fruits of the Spirit. And as we sing this chorus, this is what they are: hope, strength, peace, joy. Fear is not my future. You are. Sickness is not my story. You are. Heartbreak's not my home. You are. Death is not the end. You are. Fear is not my future. You are. Yes, you are. Sickness is not my story. You are. Heartbreak's not my home. You are. Death is not the end. You are. Hello peace, hello joy, hello love, hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. Hello peace, hello joy, hello love, hello strength, hello hope, it's a new horizon. Fear is not my future. You are. Sickness is not my story. You are. Heartbreak's not my home. You are. Death is not the end. You are. That's true. That's so true. And we can fix our eyes on God, no matter what we're going through. whether it's the highest of the mountains or the lowest of the lows. And I'm gonna read here out of Isaiah. Y'all can be seated. These words are kind of pulled from Exodus. When the Israelites were being followed out into the wilderness. And I don't want to talk about this word wilderness. That we see it as something in our lives, a place that we might be in, or something that we see that isn't the way we want it to be. Let me read this passage. It's Isaiah 43. It says, "This is what the Lord says. He who made a way through a sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out the chariots and horses, the army and reinforcements together, and they lay there, never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing, and now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." So I want us to take just a second, maybe like 30 seconds, a moment of silence, just to kind of think about the wastelands in our life, where we may be seeking or searching or wondering, where we may be afraid, we may have fear, and how we connect it to God to say, this is not my future. It may be something that I'm in. It may be something that I'm in 10 years from now. It may be something that I'm in for 40 years in the desert. But that God has a plan. And not only is he working in that situation, but he's working in my heart, and that I come out on the other side stronger through Christ. So let's do that now. Take about 30 seconds. Lord, we come to you from so many different places. Some of us come to you from the highest heights, excited that it's summer, school's over. Some of us come from the lowest lows. But we know that you're with us no matter what. For that, we thank you. And as we sing our words of praise, we honor that. We honor you. It's why we praise. It's why we sing these words. Because you are worthy. Only you are worthy. You are the only one that's worthy. So we pray these things through your Son's name. Amen.
There's honey in the rock, water in the soul, manna on the ground, no matter where I go. I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you got. There's honey in the rock. Praying for a miracle, thirsty for the living well. Only you can satisfy. satisfied. There's honey in the rock. 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 Freedom, where the Spirit is abounding in the wilderness. You will always satisfy. There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, men on the ground. No matter where I go, I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you got. There's honey in the rock, purpose in your plan, power in the blood, healing in your hands. Started flowing when you said it is done. Everything you did's enough. I keep looking, I keep finding, you keep giving, keep providing. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep praying, you keep moving. I keep praising, you keep proving. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep looking, I keep finding, you keep giving, keep providing. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep praying, you keep moving. I keep praising, you keep proving. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, manna on the ground. No matter where I go, I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you got. There's honey in the rock, purpose in your plan, power in the blood, healing in your hands. Started flowing when you said it is done. Jesus, who you are is enough. There's honey in the rock, honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock. Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus. Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus. Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus.
Amen. It's so sweet.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are we all doing today? It is good to be here with all of you. If you don't know me, I'm Shawn. I usually get to be with our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, but today I get to be in here with you all. Last week, we finished up a series walking through the book of Genesis called Origins. all about where Israel came from, all about where God's covenant came from. And next week, we're launching a brand new series through the book of Ephesians, which is going to be all about how that covenant continues on to us today. So we find ourselves in a little bit of a middle week this week. It's a little bit of the wilderness in between. And I just decided let's lean into that for this morning, because here's what I know. Most of us, we spend most of our lives in between, in a wilderness, waiting for something to change, for something to shift. Graduation parties happened all over just this last weekend, last couple weekends. And it's just this time where you're looking forward to what's to come in the fall. And you're thinking and you're going, man, I'm waiting. I've already know where I'm going, but now I'm just sitting here waiting. What's next? What's going to happen next? I can't wait for what is tomorrow. Or maybe it's a promotion and you're waiting for this promotion. You're biding your time at work, or you got to save up money so you can save up to buy this house, or so that you can finally take the risk and switch jobs, or you can finally move, or you can finally upgrade this other aspect of your life. Or let's get real, it could be this argument or this fight you're having with a particular friend, and you know that if you kind of keep going and you keep trying to make it work, on the back end of it, it's all going to work out and you're going to make peace and it's going to be okay. But right now, it's difficult because you have to get through it. You just have to keep trudging through as you're in the middle, as you're in this wilderness. Or maybe it's something internal. You've got this anxiety going on inside of you. You've got this depression going on inside of you. And you long for a day when that won't be there anymore. And maybe you've caught yourself thinking as you're falling asleep at night, maybe if I could just change this one thing, if this one thing was new in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, this thing will be different. And if this thing was different, I wouldn't feel this way anymore. And I'm just waiting for that to happen. I don't know if you've ever been there. I catch myself being there all the time. In fact, we spend more of our life waiting than we do actually doing the things that we think about. Think about vacations. A lot of you are going to go on some great vacations this summer. You spend a lot more time, if you're anything like me, planning and looking forward to those vacations than you do on those vacations. Am I right? When I was a kid, me and my family, we went to Disneyland in Anaheim, California. And this was my first time at an amusement park where I was old enough to go on all of the rides. The kid ones, the adult ones, everything. And so I just had the greatest time. Me and my two brothers and my parents, we had such a good time. We hit the end of the night, and my dad wants to do one last ride. And my dad is a bit of a thrill seeker, so he wants to do the scariest ride in the park called the Tower of Terror. Now, I've brought a picture of it. This ride no longer exists in Disneyland or Disney World. It used to. It is the scariest ride in the park because it is huge. It is incredibly tall, and it is a drop tower. So you get up inside of that building, and then they bring you all the way up, and they drop you. But because it's inside, it's pitch black. And so when you're at the top, you don't know when you've hit the top. And then as you start falling, you have no idea when the ground is coming. You're just free falling, screaming your head off, hoping there is in fact a ground and there are in fact brakes and they do work. And it was known as the scariest ride there. And I don't know why it no longer exists. Maybe because it was terrifying. Maybe because no kid wanted to go on it. I don't know. But I do know that when you got off, you got a sticker that says, "I survived the Tower of Terror," which is not the most encouraging thing to put on a sticker. If the success rate was 100%, I wouldn't need a sticker to say I was the one of the few that survived. But my dad wanted to go on it, but he didn't want to do it alone. He didn't want to make us wait the 40 minutes for the line to do it alone, so he needed one of us to go on it with him. My mom wasn't going to do it. Older brother didn't want to do it. I don't remember why. Younger brother, I think, was too young to do it at the time, and so that left me. Now, I am scared of heights. Every year in August, we take a trip to Carowinds with our middle schoolers and high schoolers. And I've got a motto that I say to myself every time we're on the tall roller coasters, and it's this: don't let the middle schoolers see you cry. I've said that to myself a number when I'm on a zip line at a summer camp, when I'm on a high ropes course. There's one time some middle schoolers who just, gone down the road, as they do. It's terrifying. And I'm like slowly going. I'm like, if I don't cry, I'm a success. I'm a success. And so that was the goal. And so here I am about to go on the scariest ride. I'm like, no, Dad, I'm not going to go on this ride. This one's all you. I'm fine. I'll wait. And my dad, he knows it'll be good for me to face my fear. And he also knows that at this time of my life, I am very motivated by stuff. So if you tell me I'll buy you an action figure, I do just about anything my parents would tell me to do. And they took full advantage of that when it came to chores, let me tell you. And so my dad looks at me and he says, Shawn, if you go on the Tower of Terror, I will buy you any candy bar you want from the gas station on our drive out. Y'all remember going to the gas station as a kid when your parents are gonna buy you a candy bar in there? Now as an adult, I walk in there and I notice all the cobwebs and the dirt in the ceilings and how messy it is. As a kid, you just see all these sugary drinks and candy. And being told I can get any one thing I want, you've just put me in heaven. So I look at my dad and I say, yes, sir, let's go. And we're going on to the Tower of Terror. And we get in this line, and it's a long line. And finally, you get into this room that's kind of octagon shaped, and they turn off all of the lights. And we've just spent this time going through this corridor where there's all these creepy paintings and the cobwebs and just this rundown hotel-themed building. And they've got stuff illuminated with green LEDs, so it's all kind of glowing. And occasionally the lights will turn off and they'll do a big flash, so it's like a lightning, and they play this lightning sound. So I'm getting scared already, and then the lights go off in this octagon room, and this TV screen comes on and gives you the story of the Tower of Terror. That supposedly 5 Hollywood stars came to stay in this hotel. Now, it's all fake, of course. It's themed off of the TV show The Twilight Zone, if you've ever seen it. Great show. And these 5 individuals, they get on the elevator. And the second the elevator starts, lightning strikes the tower, and they get transported into the Twilight Zone. It's the whole thing. And I'm old enough at this point to know all of this is fake. But I'm young enough for all this to still terrify me. So I am scared, and I'm looking at my dad, but my dad's very confident. He's like, wow, that was great. They had great animations on that. And I'm like freaked out. And then the room starts to spin, and it moves you towards the exit. And as you look over, you can see these like ghost images of you and the other people in the room. And I'm old enough to know this is all fake and smoke and mirrors and stuff, but I'm still terrified. So we get out of that room, and we get into the main queue to get on your elevator ride to go up to the top. And I'm looking over at my dad, and at one point, I'm looking at the green glow and the lines. I know this is the moment. This is my last chance to leave because we're getting close to the front. So I look at my dad and say, Dad, it's not worth it. I don't want to go on this ride. I'm done. I'm terrified. Just the line was enough for me to get my fear in. I'm good. My dad looks at me and he says, Shawn, you're going to be okay. And don't worry, it's pitch black, which means you won't even know how high up you are. I know you're scared of heights, but you're going to be just fine. I thought, all right, well, that makes sense. I'll go on it. So I pull my courage together, and we go get on the ride. And I don't know what they pay Disneyland employees, but it's not enough. They got these people there who are dressed like bellhops from an old hotel, and they're doing everything they can to make it as scary an experience as possible. Right after they say, buckle in, he'd give us a maniacal laugh, which isn't helping me as I'm this terrified 11-year-old. So I sit down in my seat, they buckle up, you get one little strap, you don't even get the over-the-shoulder thing. So I'm scared I'm gonna go flying off. The ride starts, they bring us all the way up to the top, and this is where they introduce a surprise. Something that I didn't know they did, my dad didn't know they did, no one knew they did, which is you get to the very top, and they've got these barn doors that open up, so you can see exactly how high up you are. And you get a split second to process that. And then they drop you. So they hit you with the double whammy of you're the highest ride in the park, and you know that, straight into pitch black. You have no idea when you're stopping, but of course, eventually, the brakes catch me, and we do stop, and I'm screaming my head off, and they bring us back up, and my dad goes, wow, that was cool. I'm glad they did that, and I'm screaming, and we start going back up, and it's pitch black now, so you don't know exactly when they're gonna drop you again. So they do this 4 or 5 times where they just drop you seemingly out of nowhere, eventually pick you back up again, and then they finally bring the ride to a stop, and I've got this death grip on the seat, just like, I made it. Finally, unbuckle, get out, follow my dad out. We exit through the gift shop because, of course, there's a gift shop. I get that sticker. I throw it on my chest because I did, in fact, survive the Tower of Terror. I lived. And I made it back to my mom and my dad, my mom and my brothers. And my mom looks at me and says, Shawn, how was it? And I said, it was awesome. I loved it. Oh, it was so much fun. When we went back years later, me and my aunt, one of my cousins, I made sure we went on the Tower of Terror because of how much fun I had. And I did, in fact, get my candy bar that evening. Now, why do I tell you all that story? What does that have to do with the wilderness in between? One, because I think it's kind of a fun, cute story. But really, it's because at no point in that whole story did I doubt my safety. I knew how that story would end from the second it began. It would end with me having a candy bar. It would end with me exiting through a gift shop because I knew that's exactly what Disneyland wanted for me. I knew that Disneyland didn't design rides to kill me. I knew that's not the way they do it. I knew I'd make it out the other side and be okay. And yet, I wanted to quit and I wanted to leave. At worst, I would have to endure about 30 seconds of a ride I didn't like, and then I'd get a candy bar, and I would leave being proud of myself for doing it, and it would be great. And yet I still wanted to leave and quit halfway through because the process to get there was so terrifying to me that even though I knew the fear was fake, the emotions were fake, the things I was feeling weren't legitimate, I still wanted to quit halfway through. And isn't this so much like us when we go through middle moments, wilderness moments when we're waiting? We want to be done. We want it to be over. And it doesn't matter if we know it's going to end well, if we know it's going to end poorly. We have no idea how it's going to end. The emotions we feel in our heart in these moments are real. And how many times have you, like me, cried out to God going, God, can't I be done with this already? Can't this be over? Or you're stressed out, why do I have to do this? Why did this person say? And you're in the middle. And you know you've got to go through to get it resolved, but it's difficult and it's tricky. You're in the wilderness. When we ended last series, in the book of Genesis, that's exactly where we left the people of Israel. They've been taken with Jacob down into Egypt to be with Joseph to escape a famine. And they know this isn't going to be where they are forever. And you can see this actually because Joseph's dying wish to his family is he says, when you leave Egypt, not if, but when you leave Egypt, take my bones with you because I want to be buried in the promised land, not the land of Egypt. He knows things are changing. And that's the message that gets passed on to the descendants. They know they're not going to be here forever. But they start growing and expanding. When they originally come to Egypt, there's somewhere around 70 people. And they start growing, they become hundreds and then thousands. And so the Pharaoh of Egypt starts feeling threatened. And as one Pharaoh becomes the next and forgets about Jacob, forgets about Joseph, forgets about the famine, he starts getting concerned and worried. And he makes a number of horrible policies, and the first one is he enslaves the people of Egypt. And then later he makes an announcement that all the baby boys in Israel should be executed so that there's no fear of a rebellion rising up later in his mind. One particular mother is desperate to save her child. And if you grew up in Sunday school, you know the story. She puts little baby Moses in a basket and floats him down the river. And I can't imagine the level of desperation it would take to say your child is safer on a river than in your own arms. That is a dire circumstance, but that's exactly what happens. And sure enough, by God's providence, the princess of Egypt finds this child and raises Moses as her own, and he becomes this prince of Egypt. And Moses is in this unique position where it kind of has the best of both worlds, to quote a famous philosopher. He can kind of chill it out and take it easy with the Egyptians as this prince, or he can lean into the promises that have been handed down to him on his Hebrew side. And you can see there's this interesting choice as you hit this part of the story. What's Moses going to do? Where he can escape all the fear and all the shame and all the slavery that Egypt is enduring? Or is he going to choose to be a child of the promise? And one particular day, as he's a young adult, he's out for a walk and he happens upon an Egyptian slave master abusing a Hebrew slave. And something inside of Moses stirs and he rushes to the defense of this Hebrew slave. And we don't know exactly how it happened. We don't know if it was accidental, deliberate. The Bible doesn't tell us, but Moses kills the Egyptian to protect the Israelites. Moses has chosen to lean into the identity of those who are enslaved versus those who are not. And he thinks that because he's with the Hebrews, they will protect him. They will guard his secret. But the rumor starts spreading around. Just like he betrayed the Egyptians, so this individual that he saved betrayed him. And the secret escapes and it makes it into the Egyptians, and he knows he's got to flee for his life. Because he's liked in the palace, but not liked enough if they know he's starting to identify with the slaves. And so he flees into the wilderness where he lives for decades. And we're not given a lot of windows into what Moses was feeling as he's wandering through the desert, tired and thirsty, as he eventually stops by a well, happens upon someone, and winds up becoming that guy's shepherd for decades of his life. We're not told. But I often wonder if it's something like what I feel when I'm in between. Here he is, the only Israelite with an education, thinking maybe I'm the guy who's going to finally make the promise happen. I'm going to finally get my people out of here. I'm the only guy who's got this influence and this power with Pharaoh. If anyone's going to say anything, it was going to be me, and now here I am. God, I gave up everything to protect this Israelite guy, risked it all, and yet then they betrayed me. I've got nobody and no one. I'm not an Egyptian. I'm not a Hebrew. I'm just in the desert, living with some people I've never met before, taking care of some sheep. What are you doing, God? And he stays there, not for a day, not for a week, not for a moment, for decades with apparently no answer from God. I wonder if he started to doubt that the Hebrew God even did, in fact, exist, if any of the covenants and promises were real. But Moses learned some things about the wilderness while he's there. Some things that I think help us when we're on our own wilderness moments. Wilderness is this land in between one place and the next. And that's exactly where Moses is. God is going to use this time to shape him into being the great prophet that we know him as later in the Bible. And he has this moment as he's taking care of the sheep where he looks out and he sees this burning bush. Now, that's not unusual. It's not an everyday thing, but it's a dry, deserty area, and it wouldn't be that unusual for a bush to be on fire. And shepherding is really, really boring. And so Moses just stares at the bush. It's like watching paint dry, but that's all they had for entertainment. And so that's what he did. He just watched the bush burn. But the bush doesn't burn out. And that is unique. That doesn't happen a lot. So he just goes to check it out. And the bush starts speaking to him. Now, I don't know if you've ever encountered a talking bush. I haven't. But if I did, I'd listen. And so Moses listens too. And they have this whole conversation where God basically says, all right, Moses, it's time. And that verse that was in the bumper video earlier is said, God has heard the cry of his people. And after decades and decades and decades, it is finally time for the people to be brought out of slavery in Egypt. And God says, I am sending you, go to Pharaoh and tell my people to go. And Moses, if you look at the text in Exodus 4, he has excuse after excuse after excuse. But it's the final excuse that he gives as God defeats each one by one that I want to focus on. First, Moses is like, but God, I'm just a dude who's a shepherd. And he's like, yeah, but through me, you're going to do miracles. And he does some miracles with him and all these incredible things. And then Moses ends with one final point that's always resonated with me, and it's this one. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. That one in particular has always resonated with me as a complaint, because when I felt God pushing me and calling me into ministry, that was one of my words too. Those of you who know me well, you'll know that I stuttered as a kid from the ages of 4 up until 16. And the moment that I got over my stutter a little bit, man, it still comes up. You guys heard it a little bit at the beginning of my message, actually. But it still comes up sometimes. But the moment when I first started being able to talk in public was actually the first time I ever gave a sermon when I was 16 years old. Because God is the one doing things through people, not Moses. And that's what Moses has to learn. And that's why I love God's response to Moses. See, I work with a number of people who will speak in public for the first time ever. And usually I'll say, you got this. You can handle this. I believe in you. You can do what it takes. I've heard you talk. It's going to be great. You've got this. That's actually not God's response to Moses. Here's what God says. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. It's like God's looking at Moses and going, Moses, I'm God. I know. Like, do you think I'm going to go like, oh, yeah, that's right, you stutter. All right, I guess I got the wrong guy. I'm going to go ask this other guy. I'm going to start a whole new burning bush. Going to be a whole thing. Got to burn 2 bushes today. Oh, man, got to do all these miracles. And I send another angel. Got to do it. No, he knows already. If he can burn up a bush without it burning up, yes, he knows you stutter, Moses. And yes, he's calling you anyway. And that's the whole point, that Moses can't do it. Moses isn't qualified. But guess what? God's going to do it anyway. So the people know it was God and not Moses. I mean, if Moses had been the best orator and the most eloquent guy of all time, and then he goes and he convinces Pharaoh to let him out, people will go, man, Moses, you're great. But if Moses is doing it and he's stuttering and nothing is coming out and God's doing all these miracles, they're going to go, oh my gosh, God is amazing. God rescued the people of Israel. And that's the whole point. Moses had to learn that he wasn't in control. Wilderness is where we lose control. And that's not a bad thing. Moses wanted to have a handle on the situation, wanted to know that the right words would come out, the right things would be said. It was guaranteed to succeed. He would feel confident and comfortable as he was embarking on one of the craziest things God's ever done, breaking an entire nation out of captivity. And yet, that was never the point. Moses had to learn he doesn't have control. And if you've ever spent a significant amount of time hiking or in the wilderness or camping out there, you know that is in fact one of the lessons of the wilderness, that we aren't as in control as we think we are. If you've ever been hiking or camping and suddenly you hear a rumor that there's a mountain lion in the area, and you start kind of holding your kids in close, and you're like, oh, maybe we should just take off and cut off early. Because suddenly you realize you've got the camp stove, you've got the campfire, you've got the tents, you've brought all these things with you so that you can try to tame the wilderness for yourself. You're not in control. And there's something bigger and stronger out here than you, and you're terrified of that. And so you got to protect yourself. And that's what the wilderness teaches us, that we're not in control. But there is somebody who is. I remember when I was a senior in college, it was a particularly kind of rocky, difficult season in my life. I'd been through just a lot of friendship drama, a lot of relationship drama. My grandfather passed away right at the beginning of the year, and I had to figure out everything else in life, right? Like 0 to 22, I always knew what the next step was. For me, it was college, and then after that, what's next? And I had no idea, and I just had to figure that out, and that was quickly coming due. And so all these things together in one moment, I started having a panic attacks. And at the height of it, at the beginning of the year, I had 3 every day. One when I woke up, one when I went to sleep, and one at some point during the day when I stopped moving long enough to start thinking. And so I learned to not stop moving. And there were nights when, as I was trying to fall asleep, I just would decide, I'm not going to fall asleep tonight, because I am too emotionally exhausted to have another panic attack when I wake up. And I would rather be physically exhausted tomorrow and just stay up all night and not have to go through that in the morning. And that was where I was for several weeks. And as the weeks turned into months, it became one a day, and then it became one a week, and then it became one a month. And by Thanksgiving, it was back to being kind of my normal status quo. But there was one day in the beginning, I can't even tell you how many times I wanted to quit. I wanted to be done. I called out to God and said, God, I'm over this. I'm done. I'm in the middle of this wilderness, and I want this to be finished. God, I'm so sick of this. And I didn't have any control. And I knew that. I wasn't even in control of my own brain. I didn't choose to have these panic attacks. I didn't want to wake up to this. I didn't want to go to sleep to this. This is what I wanted to be thinking. And so many times I try to refocus my brain, and it would still come anyway. It would still hit me. And I think, God, I want to have some control of this. And I didn't have any. And I was reminded, as I was at this church conference during this time, this pastor was speaking about the wilderness. Go figure. And as I was thinking across the message, I was reminded of when I was a kid and I played soccer. We got any soccer players in the room who played it as a kid? You guys will get this reference if you did, or really any sport where there's a referee with a whistle. I had a problem when I was a kid, and so did the rest of my team, where we'd be kicking the ball around and we'd think it would go out of bounds, we'd pop it up, and we'd think it would hit somebody's hands, and we'd just stop, waiting for the referee to make the call, waiting for him to blow the whistle or tell us, nah, that didn't go out, keep going. And that's the problem. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to keep playing, and then you stop when the whistle blows, not you stop waiting for the whistle. It's not the way this works. Even if you think someone falls over, you're not sure if they're injured or not, you let the referee, you let the coaches worry about that. You keep going. And so my coach all the time would shout at us this one phrase. He would say, play the whistle. You might have heard it as play to the whistle. This is the way my coach would say it, and it meant you keep going. You don't worry about if you got DQ'd, if you got disqualified. You don't worry if you're out of bounds. You don't worry if you committed a foul or not. You don't worry about those things right now. You're in the game. You're playing. Your job is to keep playing and to keep doing what you know you're supposed to do. My job as the referee, God's job as the referee, is to worry about if there was a penalty, if something's going on, if something needs to shift or something needs to change. You just keep playing. And that's what carried me through that hard moment and every hard moment since, is just this idea that, listen, I want to be done, but I didn't hear a whistle yet, so the game's not over. I want this to be over. I want this to be done. I want to hit the fast forward button because I know one day this is going to end. I know it is. I know the game's going to end, and one day these panic attacks are going to go away as they did. I know one day I'm going to grieve, and I know one day it's going to be in the review mirror as it is for me today. But I want to be done now. But I didn't hear the whistle blow, so it's not over yet. So I keep going, and I keep pushing, and you can too. And so through this encounter, Moses is convinced, all right, guess I got to go. If God's going to do miracles, if God knows I'm going to stutter and he's going to call me anyway, I guess I've got to go. And so he does. And sure enough, through all the miracles that God does, Moses does, in fact, lead the people out of Egypt. And this is where we get all those crazy stories about the 10 plagues of Egypt and Moses parting the Red Sea. And in my opinion, before the birth of Jesus, the craziest things God does in the entire Bible, certainly the craziest miracles God does in the entire Old Testament, are done in this moment to get the people out of Egypt. And Moses is right there firsthand, as are the people of Israel in this moment. And a couple weeks later, as they're wandering through the wilderness, they arrive at the promised land. It's finally time. Their season of waiting, of being in between is over. Moses, all of his decades spent in the wilderness have come to fruition. He's the guy who made the people, led them to the promised land. The people of Israel are ready. All the promises that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all the promises that continued on through Joseph, you could finally be laid to rest in the land of the promise. They were finally here. It was finally on the other side. And if you know the story, they send these scouts in just to check out what's the land look like so we can be prepared as we go to enter. And the scouts come back and they're, man, there's these big yoked out guys. They're huge, they're tall, they're giants. And they got these chariots. We don't got any chariots. We got like clubs, pitchforks, and like Ernie carved a spear earlier, and that's like the best weapon we got. I don't know, man. And Joe over there, he's got a broken leg, so I don't know what we're going to do. And so they were terrified, and they look at everyone else, we can't do this. And so God says, all right, you're not ready for the promised land then. Back into the wilderness. You know, wilderness is a place of growth. It's interesting to me that over and over again, if you read through the Bible, characters in the Bible are sent into the wilderness when they're not ready, when they need to grow. Abraham is called out of the city of Ur, and he spends the rest of his life wandering in the wilderness. And from there, he gets renamed from Abram to Abraham and becomes this great patriarch of the faith. Isaac spends his entire life wandering around in the wilderness. Into that, he grows into this great patriarch of the faith. Jacob starts out as this lying trickster, and he grows into being this great patriarch who grants these incredible blessings to his kids and has this incredible foresight into what God's plan and purpose is. And in fact, he gets renamed in the wilderness to being named Israel, which becomes the namesake of the whole nation after him. Fast forward, you get to David. David spends about half of his life in the wilderness running in fear, and it's in that moment that he goes from being a shepherd boy to being the best king that Israel ever had. Most of the prophets, most of the leaders, most of the great kings, the best people in the Bible spent their lives in the wilderness, more in the wilderness than doing the things that they are famous for. Even if you fast forward to the New Testament, John the Baptist, he's got a nickname. What is it? A voice crying out in the wilderness. Jesus, if you know him, he started his ministry part, the preaching, the teaching, the rabbi part, sometime around his 30th birthday. The first 30 years he spent time as a carpenter in Nazareth, just working and living life as you and I do. And that moment, the linchpin moment between when he goes from carpenter to rabbi, what does he do? He goes into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights fasting. There's something about the wilderness that God uses to change and to remake people. I think it has to do with the first point. When we realize that we're not as in control as we think we are, and we learn to depend on God, everything shifts. And it's so interesting to me that here this group of people are who have had the craziest experiences with God that anybody ever got to have. They got to see all these miracles. They got to see a sea part in half and walk across on dry land. You ever seen that? I haven't seen that. And yet here they are showing up at the promised land. They're like, well, God parted the Red Sea, but I don't think he can take down a chariot. That's what's going through their heads and what's going through their minds. And yet it's their kids, the next generation after, who are ready to enter the promised land. The children who were born in the desert. The children who hadn't seen those crazy miracles. The children who didn't know what happened in Egypt except the stories they got from their parents. Those are the ones who are ready for the promised land. And isn't that interesting? Because I don't know about you, but for me, so many times I pray to God, God, do a miracle. God, help me, encourage me in my faith right now so that I can see you with this sign or this thing. And God, I just need a truth for today. I need this aha moment. And we look for these experiences. And one of the lessons of the wilderness is that it's actually not about experiences. Those one singular moments, they're great, they're good. I'm not knocking it, they're very important. There's been several experiences in my life that have been very formative. And yet, it's those moments when we walk through a time of wilderness faithfully and we don't give up and we learn to depend on the referee and to play the whistle and to not give up. When we give up control and we choose to grow in this season, those are the times that make us great. And it's very hard to do. Because while we're in the wilderness, it feels like we're achieving nothing. I mean, if you look at the Israelites, they wander in the wilderness for 40 years. What happens during that time? Well, I can just skip over the whole section if I were to give you a Spark Notes version of the whole Bible and just say they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Yeah, they had stories and adventures, and we have a whole book of the Bible of all the stories and adventures that happened therein, but they're just kind of wandering. They're not achieving very much. They're not accomplishing very much. And if you're anything like me, that's hard. It's hard to feel like you're at a place in life where not much is being accomplished, not much is being achieved. I don't have anything to point to, and I can say, hey, look, I'm a success. I just bought a house. Hey, look, I just had kids. Hey, look, this is what's going on. I just got this promotion. When we're not achieving, when in this wilderness moment, waiting, wondering, hoping, praying, it's hard because there's not a lot we can point to. And we live in an incredibly achievement-based culture. And when we don't have those achievements, it can feel like we're not accomplishing anything, like our life doesn't have value. But if there's one thing I've learned, and I try to tell this to all our seniors when they graduate every year, because I have found it to be so true, and I had to learn this lesson, is this: life is less about what you achieve and more about who you become. And the thing about achieving is you can try your best at it, but you can't always control it. If you put your whole life on a specific thing you want to accomplish, if you put your value on this promotion or this role or this job or this level of income, listen, it might very well happen, especially if you work hard for it. But there's always that chance that something's going to go on in your circumstances. And when that happens, it might get ripped away from you immediately. But what we can always choose to do is in a wilderness season, choose to grow and change and become more. And that's what God uses the wilderness for. Moses in the wilderness went from being insecure and cowardly to being a great prophet. In fact, I want us to look at kind of the eulogy that the Bible gives Moses at the very end of his life. Deuteronomy 4:10, it says this: "Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when he said to me, assemble the people before me to hear my words, so that they may learn to revere me as long as they live in the land, and may teach them to their children." This is Moses' final words as he passes it on to his kids. And then, and so this is his parting message. He's at the end, and he kind of summarizes his life with these words. The mountain, while it blazed with fire to the very heavens. With dark clouds, he's describing all the miracles that he's seen throughout his life. Deep darkness. And the Lord spoke to you out of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. He's describing a time, a miracle, in which God spoke to his people. And he's saying, don't forget these words. He's at the entrance to the promised land. He's brought the people here this far. And he says, listen, God's been faithful to you. I've never left you. We've been walking together through all these difficult seasons the whole time. Don't do what your parents did and immediately forget. And when you have your own land, think you're in control. because you're not. Remember the miracles God did, and know that when the nations around you come for you, God can part the Red Sea. He spoke to you with fire on a mountain, and he can protect you again. He's in control, not you. Don't try to be the referee. Try to play the game. And at the very end of his life, we're kind of given this eulogy at the very end of Deuteronomy, and what we're told is that the Bible, Moses passes away, and it said, never before and never since in Israel has there arisen such a prophet as Moses, who spoke to God face to face, who through him God worked the miracles that he did in Egypt, who saw the sea parted, and he led the people of Israel through the wilderness. Did you hear that? Never before or since has there been such a prophet in Israel. Moses, the guy who successfully led the people of Israel through a desert and not into the promised land. That was Joshua. Moses, the guy who got the people out and then they just kind of guided them as they were twiddling their thumbs in the desert. That guy not only got to see the coolest stuff, but before the birth of Jesus was the greatest prophet to ever walk the face of the earth. Why? What made him great? Well, I have to believe it's because he chose day after day, week after week in the wilderness to walk through it with humility, giving control to God, and understanding that it was God who was the referee, not him, and choosing to lean into growth in those difficult moments. It was also in the wilderness that Moses learned some other lessons, that the people of Israel learned some other lessons. Wilderness is where we learn perspective. What do I mean by that? At the very end, right before that passage, Moses gets a chance to look into the promised land. He's taken up on a mountain. He gets to see it. And he gets to see that it's good land. And he gets to know it's finally time. The giants, the chariots are still there. But now the people of Israel are ready. They have grown in the desert. They've learned to depend on God. They've learned to grow. And if you read through the storyline of the Bible, this generation, the generation of the desert, is the generation of Israel that is the most passionate about God, that most closely follows his word, and most closely follows the things that God has for them. And Moses knows, I have led the people here, and we are here. And he can look at that, and he can know a couple things. Number one, the wilderness never lasts forever. It just doesn't. And sometimes in our life, we have this situation, and in the moment, in the feeling, we think this is never going to end. As I'm waiting for the ride to start, as I'm in the line feels like it's never going to end. I'm never going to be done with this tower of terror. As I'm in that moment, my senior year of college, and I'm in the middle of a panic attack, one of the reasons these things work is because you feel like you're going to be this scared and this panicked all of the time. And I remember talking to a counselor, and she was saying to me, one of the best things you can do is just stop and remind yourself, I'm feeling like this now, this feeling is going to end. And just doing that gives you some power over the situation, reminding yourself that this wilderness doesn't last forever. And here's the thing. As Christians, we know no wilderness ever does. Almost every difficult situation you face in your life has an end point. It comes, and then it goes, it passes, and you hit the next moment in your life. At the very worst, we know heaven's coming. And that's the worst possible one, right? Is they have to wait all the way till then. And then all the wilderness is over. It's all over. And we can wait and depend on that, knowing it's coming, and take courage in that. In the wilderness is also where we learn what really matters. When I've been able to stop and reflect on my own difficult moments and use those as someone's come to me and talking about it, as I've been able to use my struggle with panic attacks to walk students through as they're struggling with them, those are the moments that I look back and I go, man, that mattered. I wouldn't go back and step back into that phase of my life for anything. You couldn't pay me enough. But you know what? As I look back, I'm almost glad I went through it. Because the conversations I'm able to have now, that I'm able to help people through, those are the times and the places that I find the most value in, more than any other time and place in my life. And I know this is true of so many of the people in this room, so many of the things that you've experienced and seen, is that the times you've stepped into someone else's life, use the difficult moments from you to change, to work on, to move in someone else's life. Those are the times in your life that matters. Those are the times that you look on, the moments that you're the most proud of. That's why I'm so thankful for all the volunteers of this church who give up all of their time, all of their effort. And I'll just brag on our own volunteers in the family ministry environments, just watching all of y'all who go through so many wilderness seasons yourself show up for the lives of the people in this church. Truly astounds me and amazes me. And my bet is this, in those moments is probably when you feel like your life accomplished something valuable, far more than when there was a promotion, far more than when those achievements happened. Because life is about becoming and helping other people come, not about achieving. And that's why maybe this is too strong a statement, but I actually think it's the wilderness moments that matter most. Not these achievements that we wait for and we long for, but it's how we grow in the difficult seasons that forms us, that makes us into being the people that God wants for us and from us. So I don't know what wilderness you're facing as you're coming in today. Maybe it's big, maybe it's small, maybe it's lasted for 20 years. I don't know what it is. And I know it's difficult, it's painful, it's hard, it's confusing. You want it to end. I do too, for the wildernesses that I'm facing and will be facing and have faced. But I do know this. If you let yourself and you choose to grow, you will become someone great through it. As we learn to surrender control and lean into the God who is, it changes us. And it makes us, like Moses, into somebody great. It never lasts forever. It never does. And that's a reason to push on and to keep going. So take courage, keep going, and play the whistle. Let me pray. Dear God, I want to thank you for, thank you for this morning. God, thank you that you are a God of the wilderness. So many people in the Bible wander through the wilderness, and you never abandoned them. You never left them behind. God, you were with them every step of the way. Even when Moses couldn't see it, even when the people of Israel doubted it, you were there, and you brought them right back. God, I know there are people in this room who you were calling to something. And there's something difficult in their life right now, and you know what? It's preparing them for that. And it's hard to see, it's difficult to know. But God, you've got a plan and a purpose in their lives and in their hearts. And God, I pray that you would give them enough moments, enough times in these wildernesses where they can see the purpose. They can see that perspective, and they can know, like Moses got to see into the promised land, that eventually there will be an end, and they can see your glory shining through them. God, I pray that you would speak through us and speak to us this morning. And as we go out from here, I pray that you would bless our summers and our times. In your name I pray, amen.
You travel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave. Child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood runs through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear.
I love that promise that we are no longer slaves to fear. We are children of God even in the wilderness, which is amazing. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Megan. I'm our First Impressions Director, and we are so glad that you joined us today, especially if this is your first time. I'd love to get a chance to meet you out at the welcome desk after the service. I have a few quick announcements before you head out, the first of which is Touch a Truck. We have that event next weekend, and we are so excited. We're going to have a lot of different vehicles there, but we're also going to have, face painting, bounce houses, snow cones, so a lot of great things for kids to come. There's a low sensory hour from 9 to 10, and then after that, they'll have the lights and the sirens and everything. So plan to be there for as long as you're able. And we also have a new series that Shawn mentioned coming up next week called Therefore, based on the book of Ephesians. We wanted to show you a quick bumper video for that. I love the summer vibes in that video because I know we're all feeling that right now. And as we continue into summer, we have a couple other exciting things coming up, like our volunteering with Positive Attitude Youth Center. So many people volunteer for that. It's a camp that we do through their program called Hand in Hand, and we're still looking for volunteers. The camp starts June 20th, I believe. That's a Tuesday, and it runs throughout the summer on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's usually it's in the morning. It's like 9:30 to 11:30 or something like that, and it goes all the way through July 27th. So if you're interested in volunteering, there's some information on the website, and you can also email Margaret at exploresmc.org. And speaking of camp, we've been talking a lot about Wind Shape Camp. That's the week of July 4th for our kiddos, so please feel free to look more into that. You can register on their website if you're looking for a camp opportunity this summer. And then, of course, all of these opportunities, like we mentioned, all of these opportunities are made possible through your generosity. So if that is something that you are feeling on your heart this morning, a couple different ways to give to the mission and vision of making Jesus famous by becoming more like him. Thank you all so much for coming this morning, and I hope y'all have a great afternoon.